All right, so let's talk about this syllabus. So if you go home, it just takes you to recent announcements. I think it has the last 5, and also the syllabus. That's why it highlights over here. Just redirects to that. I have the syllabus and schedule separately because I get tired of updating the syllabus if something changes in the schedule. So I have them as 2 separate files. So let's talk about the syllabus first. So I'm Dr. Brian D. Knox. I have no qualms about you using my first name. I think in the professional setting, you're likely to have a situation where you, I don't know, in most environments, I feel like in the workplace now, you call your coworkers and or supervisors, if I'm taking the role of supervisor in the class, by their first names. And if not, it's possible it might be a cultural problem. Maybe it's an era of time. Maybe somebody's of a particular time when you would not call the boss by their first name. But I'm going to go ahead and let you call by my first name. I'm that generous. Thank you. I like to say dumb jokes, so I apologize in advance. Obviously, the class time. We're here right now. I'm often, if not always, here right before class. If you have a class right before, that doesn't help that much. I understand. But a number of you don't. So 2 to 3 in my office, I'm usually there. So that's why I put in by appointment if possible, because I said usually. Sometimes I have something else. I have a meeting or next couple of weeks, for example, I'm running an experiment, doing a research study. And so I might not be present right then. So if possible, please let me know that you want to come by. So I make sure that I'm there. And if I'm not going to be there, so I tell you. So you aren't, looking at a locked office door and really angry at me. I used to have an office phone. The cost of office phone service went up dramatically last semester. And I think in the last couple of years, I've gotten 1 phone call from a student through the office phone. So I volunteered. They asked for volunteers to sacrifice their office phone. So I don't have an office phone anymore. You can talk to me here in class, or you can get me by email. I usually try to respond within 24 hours. Holidays and weekends not included in that, but during business hours, try to do within a day or two. And if I can see it and it's an immediate concern, and especially if I have an answer real quick, I try to shoot back pretty quickly. So sometimes I'm pretty good. If I haven't responded for a while, one of 2 things might have happened. I might have forgotten it, or might have got shuffled. I'm not perfect at inbox management. Might have got shuffled away, and I missed it somehow. So you are within your rights to send me a reminder. Hey, did you get a chance to look at this? Yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm happy that if I missed it, I'm happy that you brought it back to me. The second thing is you might have gotten the email address wrong. This happens occasionally. There is a Brian Knox at, I think it's at u.boisestate.edu, a student from prior years, and he never answers your emails. So you'll just send them into the void. And then weeks later, you'll say, well, you never answered my question. Where did you send this email? And eventually, we might find out that it was sent to the wrong email address. So it's bknox, and there's no u. I believe all your email addresses have u.boisestate.edu. Mine has no u in front of it. All right, so this class, I'll just read it. This class covers common costing methods, variance analysis, lean accounting, and responsibility accounting. Emphasizes how costs affect managers' decisions, also emphasizes applying course topics to more realistic and less structured situations, considers ethical and strategic aspects of cost accounting. So those are all meaningful phrases to me, and maybe over the course of the semester they'll become meaningful to you. Hopefully some of these things stood out. We will spend a lot of time on these right here. We have chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, which basically are covering the prevalent costing methods that we're going to cover in the class. And then we have a couple weeks more on variance analysis, and we'll include at the end a chapter on lean accounting and a chapter on responsibility accounting as well. So this lines up largely with the desired learning outcomes, kind of in that order, roughly speaking, and definitely in the order of how we cover them in class, because I put this together. This can only get updated. This is the course description from the course catalog. This can only get updated every so often. So that's been there for a while. This I can update anytime I want to in the syllabus. So the idea is we're going to start chapter 3. We have the idea of doing CVP analysis, where we figure out break-even points quantity required to reach a certain target profit. And we'll do that with single product firms. And usually the thing we're doing anew beyond what you did in an intro class is incorporating multi-product firms as well, and a more of an emphasis on that. So that's chapter 3. That's what we're going to be covering technically this week, but it won't be due till the end of next week. We will calculate inventory cost figures using job order costing. That largely is review, but and in prior semesters, you'll see on if you look at the 2023 lecture videos, I don't have a chapter 4 week. I skip over it. I have this section in the module that says, here's chapter 4 for your reference. But what I found is that it just is so much easier to jump into activity-based costing when I'm contrasting against some actual coverage we had reviewing job order costing. So we're going to review it. I think it will be largely reviewed. Some of us have taken 206 or the equivalent a while ago. Occasionally we have people who haven't taken the introductory accounting class for a number of years, and so they're happy to have this review. For the rest of you, probably also happy to have the review. No one usually complains about an easier section of the course. Then we'll get into a couple weeks of activity-based costing. We'll talk about the standard activity-based costing situations, some first stage allocation where we figure out activity cost pools. Then we'll calculate some activity rates. Then we'll apply the activity rates to figure out the cost of different jobs. Again, we're gonna couch activity-based costing as a modification of job order costing. And then we'll have a second week of activity-based costing here where we'll jump over to where we are. I'm mentally going through the schedule here. A second week of activity-based costing where we'll go through advanced ABC. And it doesn't want to zoom out of just one. And that's when we'll talk about some approximated activity-based costing and some time-driven activity-based costing, which those are newer topics as well. Some of the things in 5.1 will be new to you, or review of things that you didn't catch potentially in 206. And then we have calculate inventory cost using process costing. It's got one bullet point here, but it is 4 weeks on the schedule. It's one of the challenges of this course is to get you all the way through process costing. That's chapter 6. We do weighted average for 2 weeks. We have midterm, and then we cover the FIFO method of weighted average of process costing. Excuse me. After the midterm for 2 weeks. That takes us up to spring break, and then we apply variance analysis, which is us going over chapter 7 here in 2 weeks. We'll start with direct materials and direct labor variances, which will be likely more familiar to you, but we're adding in how they're recorded in the accounting system. A lot of times when you go over variance analysis, so standard costs in your intro class, you don't know how it's, or a lot of the questions don't require you to also figure out the journal entries, so they automatically spit out the variances. We're gonna include that in this section here. And then we'll go over overhead and mix yield variances as well. Mix and yield variances the next week. All right. Now, chapter 8 is where we go over lean accounting with a focus on backflush costing. Chapter 10 is our responsibility accounting section, and we will focus in on service department cost allocations and transfer prices. 2 of the 3 larger scale sections in that chapter. Okay, and that leads us in the schedule to our 2 weeks here. We're doing the exam. So let's talk about, we'll keep going with the syllabus, and we'll come back to the schedule as we need to down here under additional information and under the point breakdown. So this textbook, Open Cost Accounting, is mine. You'll all appreciate the price. I know that. It's free. That's a good price. I think the majority of students have said they enjoy that it's I tried to write it in an approachable manner and tried to explain things in regular English instead of textbookese. So hopefully it is easy to digest. There are advantages and disadvantages to having it be written by me and me be the professor. The advantage is it's all in one voice. So I'll say something and it'll probably mirror what I wrote in the textbook, unless I've changed my thinking over the years and I haven't updated the textbook. The downside is it's all in one voice. That's the same thing that was the upside is also the downside. So sometimes when the professor isn't very clear to you, you just aren't connecting, I didn't say something very clearly. You can look in the textbook and you're like, oh, now it makes sense. Because it was written by somebody else who explained it differently. They just have different ways of putting words together, different examples, that suddenly it clicks. Well, there's no second voice here. It's me here and me there. And so I want to make sure that you're aware of that going in, because we might have to go out of our way to make to clarify things. And if you have questions, I want you to make sure you do reach out. You do ask those questions. There might be an additional need beyond the normal class for you to do that if something I'm saying isn't making much sense. All right, that's the textbook. It's for free. You can go to the link there. There are links all over the modules for the different chapters. It's opencostsaccounting.org. Also, you can put in .com and .net. They funnel to .org. All right, grades. So it's out of 1,000 points, and this is just a very standard plus minus percent system here based on 1,000 points. If it changes your grade, I will round your final grade up to the nearest whole point. So sometimes there are like fractions of a point available or somehow arise in a quiz or whatever. And I'm willing to round it up to the nearest whole point, including, like I'm saying, give the example here to point out 929.2, that shouldn't round up, but I'm going to force it to round up 1 point. That's the extent of my generosity. I'm sorry. But if it will make a difference to your grade, if it's in the middle of an A, I'm not going to round it up just because you want to have that extra point on your conscience. It's not going to change your grade. So I don't know what else to say about that. You can read that table. I occasionally get emails asking me to round grades up beyond that, but you have all semester to plan for this, and the grading is pretty transparent. You get pretty quick feedback on the quizzes and even the exams about how well you did. So let's talk about that now. So attendance is 200 points, and that's just right here under roll call attendance. Right here, it'll show up. The test student doesn't have any attendance yet, so there's nothing there. But that's out of 200 points here in the in-person class. It's a little different online, but they know their business. And then we have quizzes, as you can see in the schedule, which I got rid of, but I have an extra right here. As you can see in the schedule here, I didn't get rid of it. I moved it over. I remember now. We have these quizzes right here, and here, and here, and here. So they are each worth 25 points. I even put this down here. 25 points per quiz. And here, week 2, there are 2 of them because we have the week 1 quiz that's due at the end of week 2. Other than that, it's 25 points per week for those quizzes, totaling 300 points. Right here, you can see it. Nope. No, it's not showing it because I'm not actually signed in as me, so I'm not editing it. Let's talk about those quizzes for a second. These are all Canvas quizzes. You have unlimited attempts, and your highest grade counts. I want you to have multiple attempts at each of the quizzes. You'll probably need multiple attempts at the quizzes, and that does a few things. Each of the quizzes is based on a test bank, a relatively large test bank. I expand it every semester. That's what I'm doing right now. Some of the quizzes aren't available. And by having multiple attempts, that makes sure you get a lot of exposure to different ways of asking questions about this topic, which is useful because come exam time, the exams are also based on the same test bank. And so if you never saw that style of questioning because you just did one attempt and you accepted the grade there, you might pay the price when a very different kind of question comes up that was in that test bank that you never experienced. So I want you to do multiple attempts. That's really the expectation. And that's why I set it up this way. It really incentivizes you to go through the attempts as much as possible. for the quizzes. And the exam reviews are set up the same way. They're worth more points. They're kind of basically a quiz. They're just worth more points. They will be a little longer, maybe more than a little. That's why I give them more points. But they'll draw from the same test banks, help you prepare for the exams. So let's talk about the scheduling of these exams. They're kind of a little weird not a little weird. I have specific things I'm wanting you to do with this scheduling here. So basically the idea is these 2 weeks are the midterm. You could break it up and review 1 week and then take the midterm the second week. It's online. It's through Canvas, through the Proctor Record Plus or whatever they have you do. They get a blood sample and they check your. It feels invasive. I understand, but at least it's free. Not sure that's a recommendation for much else, but you can do it just like this if you want. You can schedule it differently too. The midterm will be available both these weeks, so you could start out with an attempt like day 1 if you wanted, and then see where you're falling short. Oh, I didn't. If you haven't seen it yet, one detail here is you're allowed 2 attempts at each exam. Because I'm relying on these test banks, and there's a level of stochastic quality to that, meaning random. That's a fancy way of saying random. I give you 2 attempts to average out. Maybe your first attempt you get all the really, really, really hard questions. So let's give you 2 attempts. Then that'll increase the odds that you get a representative test with what you draw from the test bank. And so my point is, you might want, if some of you at least, will want to take a midterm attempt this first week of midterm when it's available. And then what you'll want to do is, okay, well, I didn't do as well on these sections over here, so as I'm going through the midterm exam review quiz and doing the multiple attempts on that, I'll work especially hard on those questions or pay attention to those questions because that's where I messed up the first attempt, and you can take it again by the end of the second week. So some people structure their midterm experience like that. This midterm exam review, just like the final exam review, it has its points on this first week, but it's not actually due until the end of the second week. I want you to think of this as a unit of testing, because I want you to have the ability to do the exam review and get points for it throughout your time between the 2 attempts. Maybe you're going to take the midterm exam, your second attempt, at the last day, the Friday of this second week here. I want you to have the opportunity to use that review quiz all the way up till that day. So it's not due till that day. They're both due at the end of that 2-week period. And the final exam works the same way. You've got final exam review quiz, 50 points, and the final. They're both available during this 2-week period and both due at the end of the 2-week period. All right, what questions are there about that?
The review quiz also multiple attempts, or is that just?
Yes, it's multiple. It's unlimited. Yes, it's just like the quizzes. Exactly. Good question. Yeah. No. Sorry. Yes, there's no class here those 2 weeks. Yeah. No. Make sure I say this right. I wrote it down. Sorry, I jumped in the answer and then I realized that maybe I said it wrong. I think what I found most success actually is we're going to have class the midterm review week, and we'll be doing review in the class. And I will be here for class periods in the room here, kind of like as extended office hours on the midterm week here, this week. But attendance is not required. So I'll mark you as here, whether you're here or not, and I'll just be available for people who are doing who have questions. So yes and no. Sorry. Yes, there's class this week. I'm going to dangle attendance points to make sure you come in and do some review. For your own sake, you'll thank me after. But then I'm going to let you have these 2 days off during the midterm week. Good question, and I didn't include that. I got to make sure I either update the syllabus or send out an announcement about that. And the same pattern will be there for the final here. So this is dead week. We'll come in those 2 days, do some review. What we'll probably do is go through an attempt of the final exam review between those 2 days. Just go through it in class, do the questions, and whatever it pulls up for us, or at least base our review on that. And then we won't have class during that. That means the final exam period, whatever we're assigned. Usually it's for this class, it ends up being like Wednesday 2 to 4 or something like that. Whatever final exam we are in the exam week. You don't have to be here in class. I will be in this room physically during that period to answer questions if you have questions during that time. But you will be counted as present whether you're here or not. Yeah. No, it's just over what's after the midterm. Yeah, this is supposed to be the coverage of the final. That's what it's supposed to reflect. I'm saying this is the reflects the coverage of the midterm. Yeah, I figured I could get away with that because with Chapter 6 straddling the two, you really can't forget a lot of your Chapter 6 stuff from before the midterm. I don't know. Sorry, I jumped a line of the logic in my head. I figured I could get away with that. I said that because the downside of doing that is after mid-semester, students sometimes will just erase all their knowledge, clear the hard drive space of everything that came before. And so that's really good to have a comprehensive final. But since Chapter 6 here is straddling, you kind of have to remember a lot of this stuff to pick up this stuff, which is going to be on the final. So I don't think we'll have that. And I had a chance to look into your souls and your business startups ideas now. So I know you're not the kind of people who would just clear out all your memory. It's supposed to be a joke about looking into your soul. I didn't really scan your souls. Good question. Yeah. No, it's separated by that coverage right there. What other questions? Anything unrelated to this that you're like, oh, I saw this somewhere, or I'm worried about this? Okay. So let's see if we have anything else to talk about on the syllabus here. I look, honestly, make a good faith effort to participate fully in class. I haven't had to police that. Usually that's I get enough participation from you all that I don't have to say, well, if you don't participate more, I'm not going to give you the points for this class session. I mean, I put this in here because theoretically, if you all become very unparticipative, it could be useful to put some points on some level of participation. But I think there's enough typically that enough participation from you, trust and reciprocity there, that we can make that work. You can miss three class sessions. I know you get sick. I know you have to travel sometimes. I know you have job interviews, things, good things for your career. And my class that day is not critical compared to you getting that job. So you get a day off. You get 3 days off up to, and you'll be counted as if you were present. Also, if the university says, hey, you can't be here, or has some university-approved absence, that won't count against your attendance grade either. We talked about recordings. Talked about unlimited quizzes. Talked about how the exams are on Canvas through Proctor U Record Plus. It's free. Here's what's available on the exam. You can use a calculator, a physical calculator, not a computer or phone calculator. I allow it to be up to, I got to look at what I check. I'm pretty sure I don't check the box to allow a graphing calculator, but any other type of calculator is fine. And you can use Excel. Many of you will just use Excel to do your calculations anyway. You can use Excel, a blank spreadsheet. Don't have a spreadsheet with all your notes. That won't work. You will be dinged for that, I'm saying. You can have notes, 1 page, normal sheet of paper, 1 page, front and back, handwritten, typed. If you want to test out your vision and type it real small, you're free to do that. That's up to you. And I already told the test bank is the same for the online quizzes and the exams, and 2 attempts. Highest score counts, of course. I think that covers the structure of the class, I think pretty well. So if you look at the point breakdown here, you get 20% of your grade, 200 out of 1,000 points, for coming and putting up with me, coming and learning in person. And I joke about that, but the fact that you're here in person, I think accounts for a good degree of the difference that we see between, that I've seen between the online and the in-person version. So it's not that the mean is different necessarily, but the distribution tends to be wider online versus in person. That's been my general experience. Because I make you come here, and by force, you are therefore required to learn something. So even those who wouldn't want to learn it get pushed up further. Unfortunately, also, I think there's also the fact that because we have a very set period of time, you come here, you're here for class. That also kind of puts a ceiling on the norm of what's expected for amount of time. So on the online, I do see a longer distribution up here where people really put a lot of hours into it because there's not this norm of, oh, well, I come to class and that's it, and that's great. So anyway, you're here. You get 200 points for being here. And online, there's a separate component for attendance that they do to try to make up for that. Try to bring these two a little closer. Again, the mean for both of these. I'm not saying the grade or performance is different between the two, but the variance here differs. I was going somewhere. Well, yeah, I have things that I do to make online a little bit less different, more like in person. Quizzes are 30% of the grade, and quizzes are just you practicing the exam, so you're welcome for that. They are the same questions. Again, it's a pretty big test bank, and I expand it every year. Every semester I'm teaching this. But you get points for practicing and spending time on that. So you invest some time. You invest time in the material, and you'll be rewarded with points for there. You have exam review. Again, you're investing time preparing for the exams. On the exam review, you get points for that. And then the exams themselves are 40% of the grade, which is a sizable chunk. It's not like back in the day when like 90% of your grade was on the final exam. Back in the day, I don't think I took any classes quite to that degree, but that was pretty common practice, say 60 years ago. But it's still a good chunk, so that you have to perform. You have to put these principles and facts into your memory well enough so you can recall them with a degree of regularity to score decently in the moment on the exam without external help, besides your note page. So let's jump into chapter 1 and 2. I think I can briefly summarize them because we don't have any questions on them. You'll want me to summarize them because we want to get to the questions. I was a student once. I know how it is. I want to get to the questions. If the professor is signaling that this is important by assessing us on the thing, then let's get to the important thing. We don't have to interpret it cynically and say, you just want points because you want the grade. No, if I've made something no points, I'm kind of signaling to you, well, that's not as important of a thing. I'm not going to assess your knowledge of it, so maybe you don't need to know it as well. So let's skip through and move through chapters 1 and 2 so we can get to chapter 3 before the end of the week here and start looking at some of those questions. So I thought it was real clever writing, but whatever. Pat myself on the back. I'm going to make that joke a lot, by the way, patting myself on the back. I don't really mean any of it. I like what I did here, but I know there are. I have a long list of things I'm hoping to update about the textbook already, and I'm the one who made it. So don't think I believe every joke I make about this. Let me just start with some of the things here, and it might seem like we're not going to skip through and summarize much, but let's start with this idea right here. I think it'll help frame us in terms of what we do in this class and why some of you who are accounting majors will actually, how you don't like this topic. I get that a lot. Some people who are really gung-ho about accounting really don't like cost accounting or really don't like managerial accounting in general. And I'm going to use the two interchangeably, managerial or management accounting, either one of those, and cost accounting. And I know out there in the world, if you Google it or you talk to certain professors, they make this big deal about the difference and how cost accounting is this, that, and management accounting is this, that. And what do I say about them? Bless their hearts. Good for them. I'm going to use them interchangeably. They're not different enough to make a big deal about. In fact, the fact that they're almost synonymous, at least in my view, is part of the argument that I make. So we are in here, in this class, in a descriptivist field, in a positivist field is another word for it. The idea being, we're observing kind of the accounting that happens inside of businesses without anybody watching, without any standards board or government agency telling the business they have to account this way. Managerial accounting will happen anyway because the business wants to do something. It wants to get somewhere. So I want to get somewhere. If I'm the business, just now I'm embodied as the business. I want to get somewhere. I'm going to do certain things. I'm going to say, what is it? I'm going to define where I want to get to. I want to define where I am. I want to define what pushes me in that direction and what actions I can take to go there. And managerial accounting is just the numbers that result from that push. Companies want, when they're for-profit companies, they want profit. They're for profit. That's the legal entity is designed as a vehicle for maximizing the profit of the person who invests the money for the principal. And so the very, very simply, pi here is profit, is revenue minus cost. Super obvious, but we're going to stop there and not define it any further because this kind of gives us a lot of insight. The firm wants profit. It's designed to go get profit. So the managerial accounting that it does is going to be designed to figure out, well, what's increasing revenue, which is going to increase. Profit goes up with revenue. And what is also driving cost because profit goes down with cost. So we're going to figure out what's in those dots. What is driving those things? And that's what we're doing in managerial and management accounting. And so I go into the point of why I consider the two synonymous. The cost accounting is supposed to be focused on this cost piece over here. Even managerial accounting, though, is focused on the cost piece because it's what the business can most directly control, directly and reliably. I think those are the two words I even use in the textbook here, which I wrote probably years ago, but I think I remember that. They can most directly and reliably control the costs. They can pick up the phone and tell the factory to stop doing that. If I'm the manager of the firm, I can't pick up the phone and tell customers, you got to buy this. They can say no. I have authority, though, legal authority, or direct authority through the command structure of the firm to say, no, we need to stop doing that cost. So it's just more reliably and predictably focused on costs when we're figuring out how to get where we want as a manager. We're going to account for some things. Okay, well, honestly, most of it's going to be about the costs. I want to kind of jump past chapter 1. That kind of frames why it exists as a field, and then I didn't quite contrast prescriptivist fields, which is like financial accounting and tax accounting. In financial accounting, you have to learn the rules, which they're not bad. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're arbitrary. They're there for a reason, but they still are the rules set down by FASB that you have to do. And so that's what you have. That's how they prescriptivists. They prescribe a certain way you have to do it. In tax accounting, when you're doing taxes, the Internal Revenue Code prescribes a certain way you have to do the taxes. You have to do the accounting for it. Here, we're just kind of observing in nature how businesses tend to do these things. So I'll put in these little weasel words like, well, usually or often the business will do this. And you're like, but I want a rule. A number of you are attracted to accounting because you like rules. So be it. This class will disappoint that part of you. I'm sorry. A lot of times there just aren't when I talk about how it's done in practice, there aren't really those hard and fast rules, in the sense that here is the line of the codification that tells you have to do it this way. Instead, what it is over hundreds of years, businesses have found this is usually the best way to get the information you need to get towards a higher profit. That's usually the phrasing or the idea behind it. And so we have under chapter 2 here, we're going to go over relevant cost analysis and strategic cost analysis very briefly. And I have some questions. I have a test bank available, but I cut this chapter out so I could put chapter 4 in for next week. Yeah, I created this dumb little GIF there. David Ricardo, who I remember him being credited with comparative advantage, and a lot of work on that. That's what I recall from my undergrad days, and I know it's more than that. But the question now is, okay, well, how do you maximize profits? And so we start by saying, okay, well, the simplest way of talking about how the firm is going to maximize profits, and then therefore want to get some management accounting data, some information, is they have decisions to make. The firm has to make some decisions. That's a setting in which the firm has ways in which it can maximize profit, because some decisions will lead to a higher profit. Some decisions will lead to a lower profit. Some alternatives for the decision we have to make, XYZ decision, will lead to a higher profit. Some will lead to a lower profit. So this chapter talks about these archetypal ways in which businesses over the years have made decisions. Let's jump down to these 4 general categories of the traditional relevant cost analysis decisions that we have to make. Sometimes they're called tactical decision analysis. We have make or buy decision, for example. Firms often have to decide, well, am I going to make this input or am I going to buy it? Do I need to... So as a business, let's say a manufacturing business, I could make the engine of the car myself, or I could buy the engine from another car company and then build the other components of the car. It's 2 different ways of supplying that engine. And I'm going to look through the revenue and cost. I'm going to look through the sales under the make option and all the costs under this column right here, under the make option, and compare them to the sales, which is the revenue here, and the costs under the buy option. And it tends to sort out like this. And then the difference there, this difference here is the differential profitability of buy to over make. Number 1. Looks like buy is $75,000 or $75 million, depending on the frame here. $75,000 more profitable than to make. So that's very archetypal way, very typical way of slicing down to very simple decisions, traditional decisions. Maybe simple is the wrong word, but traditional decisions. And with this make or buy example of why we would use managerial accounting. We're going to look at this kind of information right here to determine, in large part, the costs specifically. Revenue plays a role, but a lot of the work is done figuring out the costs of the 2 different options and find which one maximizes profit. And that's one way we can maximize profit. Choose the one that has higher profit. Another type of decision we go through is sell or process further. So, for example, let's say I am the car company that makes the engine. I could just sell the engines, sell those engines on the market. Lots of other car companies like to have engines ready-made. They want to put them in their cars. Or I could keep developing those engines into a full-fledged car and sell the car. You're currently in a sell or process further decision right now. If you're this is not a company anymore, you're deciding whether to sell your labor on the market or to process the labor further. You've decided to process further by getting education here. Well, I could sell my labor at a certain price on the market without whatever credential you would earn, whatever, accounting degree, finance degree, business administration degree, whatever. You could sell your labor at that level versus, well, I can incur extra time and cost and financial cost and then sell hopefully at a higher level after I've gotten the credential. So you're comparing those personally. And one way or another, you've all kind of made if you're here, you've made the process further decision, at least on a micro level here. So it tends to look like, I make my joke about cookie dough, and yeah, I eat some cookie dough sometimes. Sorry, I don't pay attention to the legal warnings they make. Someday it'll kill me. But yeah, we have usually a cell which has lower revenues, but doesn't have all the costs associated with processing further. And then we have process further, which hopefully has higher revenues because it's going to have additional costs to process the thing further. And we at the end have to say, well, what is the ultimate profitability of these two options? And here, definitely cell is more profitable. In this example here, we actually would not do well to process further because we don't earn enough revenue to offset the cost of processing further. The other thing about sell or process further decisions is notice that the joint costs. So go back to my example of the car engine, like car parts, where a company that builds car engines, we're deciding whether to keep selling the car engines or to process them further into cars. The cost, the $500,000 here to build the engines stays the same, whether we build the engine and sell it or build the engine, then build the car around it. Either way, we're building the engine. So one of the reasons for the name up here of relevant cost analysis is that it helps point out that certain costs are irrelevant. The joint cost for building the engine isn't relevant to the decision. Not this decision. Either way, we're building the engine. Only things that differ between the alternatives are going to be relevant to your decision. Only when it differs between these two columns does it show up here, which is really what's relevant to your decision. And at the end, this is the square, the cell, that's relevant to your decision overall. Looks like process further is $250,000 less profitable than sell. So yeah, we want to sell as is right now. We also have keep or drop, another traditional way of analyzing, another traditional decision businesses often come across over the years. And there's another version of it, which is add or don't. So the idea is we have multiple lines of business. I don't know, multiple factories, multiple restaurants, multiple employees potentially, but I think it's easier to conceptualize as multiple product lines or multiple factories. And we're trying to decide, well, do we keep all of them? Here we get into the decisions that surround loss leaders. We are in a world full of loss leaders right now. You can download all sorts of free apps on your phone. You can get all sorts of free stuff from Google. You can get all sorts of free offers and free ebooks on a variety of different topics or whatever. And the profitability, when it's bringing in $0 because it's free to the person providing that free thing, sure seems like it's always going to be negative, right? It's like, oh man, the profit to that person is at least, well, it's less than or equal to 0. It's only 0 if cost is also 0. But yeah, profit's going to be, why are they in business like that? Well, if we look into the keep or drop examples right here, here are some reasons why you might actually want to keep those loss leaders. It's shown right here. Not this example specifically. There's a better one. Okay. Now this example is the naive version. All right, so let's say we're naively saying, why would anybody do a loss leader? Why would they send out something for free? They're just giving it away at the store. How are they still in business? So the naive understanding of that, basically like this. This is an example I put together of, well, we have PB and we have J, sales of peanut butter and sales of jelly. If we keep both of them, we earn an additional $250,000 from jelly. We're thinking of dropping jelly. We keep it or we drop it. That's the keep or drop decision, the two alternatives. If we drop jelly, the naive understanding is, we can drop all the equipment for jelly, $200,000 in cost, and all the salaries associated with jelly, $40,000 of cost gone, and all the other costs associated with jelly also gone. Great. And so we've dropped $250,000 in revenue, but we dropped $240,000, $260,000 of costs. Great. That's great. Sounds like we should drop jelly. Sounds like the loss leader is unprofitable. But if we have more refined view of this keep or drop decision, the reality is if we drop jelly and we're a peanut butter and jelly company, we're probably going to hurt those peanut butter sales too. The two tend to go together. All right, it's mostly analogy. I'm not sure it really works as far as you buy your jelly from the company you buy your peanut butter from. I don't know, maybe. But the two go together. The idea is we have two products that go together. And if you drop it, you don't just lose that sales revenue. You also are going to decrease the sales revenue of sister product lines that relied on some cross-selling. Okay, which is, I'll get back to the loss leader in a second. And so, yeah, we're going to reduce the revenue there. Also, by the way, you might think you can reduce all these salaries, but some of these people, some of this $40,000 is for people who are working on both peanut butter and jelly lines. And you still need them for the peanut butter after you've dropped jelly. So you can't actually reduce all $40,000 of that. So now once we've refined the idea and realized, oh, we're also losing $50,000 of revenue here, and we can't quite get rid of $20,000 of cost, suddenly we have a more refined view. And, oh, look, even though on paper it might seem like jelly is profit here. Let's see, profit sub J. Looks like it's 250K revenue minus 200K. This is our cost. Plus 40K plus 20K. So it looks like the profit for jelly is negative. So you think drop it for sure. The keep or drop decision is actually more complex and explains to a degree the existence of lost leaders out there. Sure, they're giving away the ebook for free. They're giving away the service for free, but they're selling something on the back end. They're able, well, for Gmail, they're selling all your data, for example. They're reading all your emails and they're selling it to advertisers. And we're largely okay with that, people who use Gmail. They're giving away the ebook. Yeah, I give away the ebook, but 1 out of 1,000 people who reads the ebook goes and buys my course for $1,000 or something like that. So if I dropped the ebook, which it looks unprofitable, the ebook, I put time into it, I put money into it, and it brings me zero revenue directly. If I drop that, then I'm going to lose a lot of sales on my sister product of the course or whatever. So you have a lot of lost leaders that are going to play a role in the keep or drop example decisions here. And it's the same with add or don't. It's just that we start with, this is the status quo. It's not there yet. Do we add it or not? It's a slightly different framing, but the decision ends up stacking up almost exactly the same way that it tends to pan out. Last type of decision we have is the traditional tactical decisions that we're setting up a finite number of options we have, and we're deciding between them because we can see the profit of one option versus the other, one alternative versus the other, is a special order. So somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got usually a really big order is the thing. So it's special enough because it's big. I want the special order, but of course, because I'm special, I'm giving you a lot of volume. I want a discount. And so we have to decide whether to accept or reject it. That's at least this version of the decision. They have a set price, and we can either, there it is, accept or reject. Those are the two alternatives we have. And I don't have a table for this because we don't really cover what we're going to come back and cover in chapter 3, which is what you're interested in. Like I said, we're interested in getting to chapter 3 so we can look at the quiz questions. We're interested in questions that are about special order that don't have a set price. So I don't spend that much time belaboring the idea of accept or reject special orders. Okay, great. I guess I do more great images that I created. Good for me. And then I talk about the strategic aspect of cost analysis. So I'm going to go through that just a little bit. Maybe that'll end the class, and then on Wednesday we'll start talking about chapter 3, go over some problems, and kind of start hitting on that. So relevant cost analysis is great, but it presupposes that you have numbers for all these things that are relatively reliable. If you put it in the table as a numerical piece of information, it means you have a number for it. But there are some things that are hard to quantify, usually because they take place over the long term. And as we get further out into the future, it becomes more and more uncertain. And that's at least true for most people. If it's not true for you, you are very certain about the future. What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be like Biff in Back to the Future? You should be in that mansion because you can get all the sports bets right and everything. Thank you. This is supposed to be a dumb joke, right? But as you get further out in the future, things get more and more uncertain. That's just a fact intrinsic to the decision space. So strategic analysis is often called qualitative analysis to contrast it from any quantitative analysis. Usually what we're saying is, well, yeah, the relevant cost analysis says, for example, we should make that, or it says we should buy that, for example. Yeah, okay, it says we should buy. It says it's going to be $75,000 more profitable to buy that input than to sell it, than to make it. Oh, I said that wrong. Than to make it. But in the long term, our general strategy is to have high quality product, and we have greater control over the quality if we make it that input ourselves. This is often a line of thinking here. So yes, the relevant cost analysis says this, but that's usually what strategic cost analysis does. It says yes, but there's something that's hard to quantify that isn't in this table that in the long term will hurt us if we do that. So this whole section here, so well written, so great, just life-changing. But we're going to skip over it. It says basically that relevant cost analysis is the beginning of your analysis. It's not the end. I get that 75,000 cell in that make or buy table. That's important as the beginning of the decision. That's not the end. Because, okay, yes, it said that, but what are the real ramifications of that? Some of which are going to defy being put into that table. So what is our overall strategy? What do we see long-term being the ramifications of that? Lastly, I define opportunity costs and sunk costs in chapter 2. Don't have any questions on that. So, no matter how many tears you would shed if you read that, we're going to skip over it. So, in fact, we're at 4:14. So don't pack up just yet. But I'm wrapping up. So, chapter 3, we'll talk about that at CVP, cost volume profit analysis, break even, target profit. You can. Maybe a decent strategy would be to pop open quiz 3 and kind of see the kind of questions. It doesn't hurt you to make an attempt or to open up an attempt and say, well, this is the kind of question that I'm likely to see. It can't hurt. Yes, there's one last thing I wanted to say and I forgot. I pointed at it in the announcement. You'll notice we have chapter 4 quiz and chapter 3 quiz and then all chapter 6 quizzes. And that's definitely not all the quizzes in the course. So the chapter 5 quizzes are still in the shop. I'm ramping up the test bank for both those, as are all these quizzes. But they'll be out in short order. I doubt any of you are moving ahead that quickly in the course. You'll get ahead that fast that you'll run into that problem. Just know, you look on Canvas, and these quizzes are the only ones available. You look in the modules, and I see chapter 3, I see chapter 4. I don't see anything in chapter 5. There will be a quiz there. It's just not there yet. It's coming out, and that's going to close it. So thank you very much. Let's wrap it up. We didn't.